Hi, this is your Swapnil Bhartia and welcome to TFL Let's Talk. Today we have with us Shane Fry, CTO of RunSafe Security. Shane, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here and really excited for this discussion.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And if I recall correctly, this is the first time I'm talking to you and also talking to someone from RunSafe Security. So I am also curious and interested in the history and the story of the company. When was the company created? What is the origin of the company and why it's created? Because security to a lot of people may sound like a solved problem.
We started back in really 2018. That's when I came on board, and we really got going from a product security perspective. And the whole reason we exist is because companies have known, developers have known, security researchers have known about memory corruption vulnerabilities in embedded devices for almost 30 years now. It's been a long time, and we still haven't solved this problem. Year over year, we're seeing more vulnerabilities being reported in embedded devices, and that's not going down, and that's a bad thing. Especially as we look at industrial control systems devices and critical infrastructure. If your water goes out, that's a major problem, right? If the water goes out for a city, that's a huge problem. And so we're really here to help kind of flip the script on cyber attacks against critical infrastructure and help device manufacturers and asset owners deploy more secure devices and make attacking those devices much more difficult.
When we talk about embedded devices, depending on who you talk to, it could mean so many different things. It can be the tiny real-time operating system running devices. It could be a sensor. It could be, you can say remote data center on top of a mountain or a tree. It could be, even EVs. You can call them embedded devices, or you can call them computer on wheels. So when we are talking to RunSafe Security, what kind of embedded devices are we talking about here, or it really doesn't matter? It's embedded device. That's what you protect.
Yeah, really, it doesn't matter to us. Our solution's pretty generic. Now, I will say, we talk to some companies and they go, we've got a sensor that's running a microcontroller, and maybe it might even just be like an analog to digital converter reading a temperature value. We're not going to be able to protect that. So maybe one level above that, but outside of that, we're really flexible. We've got customers and devices that we're protecting that are really minimal resources, all the way up to an embedded device that's really a full up server rack running in a data center somewhere. So we can kind of work in all the spaces there.
Can you share some use cases of what kind of devices are we talking about? Or also if you can talk about specific industries, because healthcare and medical, they have their own devices. Healthcare equipment are there. We can talk about whole factory floors. They have all the embedded devices. So if you can share some use cases so that people, our audience, will know what kind of devices you're talking about here.
We're really big in aerospace, in defense. We're big in energy generation, liquid natural gas, oil and gas. Automotive is a big one for us as well. Medical device is actually a really great use case. We're talking to a couple medical device manufacturers to protect devices that keep humans alive. And so that's something you definitely don't want this, a Bluetooth enabled pacemaker, for example, to be hacked. That'd be a very bad situation. But then, we're also working with people in oil and gas, people in, energy delivery and things like that. So, really a broad range of devices. And, we just closed a Series B round, and BMW I Ventures is invested in us as well. So, lots of flexibility in our solution and, applicability across the world, really.
And when we look at these devices, depending on the industry, they are like healthcare or defense, aerospace can be different from the data center. So of course, business criticality or business continuity is as important for data center as something else, but the production needed is also different. So can you also talk about, is it like you have one suite of solutions that can be used across industries, or they are like customized solutions for defense is different versus healthcare? Also, some industries are heavily regulated, some are not. So that also plays a role, because sometimes you do have to have a tick on that checkbox in order to compliance. So can you also talk about these different use cases, what challenges poses, and how does your solution help them?
Yeah, so our solution's very generic, and that's one of the big selling points for us is we can work in a really resource constrained environment all the way up to something like a DoD weapon system, and it's the same. And that gives us a lot of confidence when we deploy across industries that we're not going to cause issues because it's the same product that's tested all over the place. And that's really a key for us. And, as we think about, defense, there's definitely different requirements they have from a security perspective, but we can help meet those requirements just the same as we can with, say, healthcare, where we can provide a software bill of materials as well as cyber protections. So we can help you understand the risk in your software supply chain, as well as give the devices at the edge that protection they need as well.
What does this solution look like? Is it a suite of solution? Is it a platform? How does it work? Where does it run? Does it run on public cloud? It can run on private cloud, or it can also run in your data center.
RunSafe Identify solution is our software bill of materials. It's part of a platform that runs in the public cloud. We can also do a private cloud deployment or an on-prem deployment as well. And that connects to your source repositories and integrates that software build time to generate software bill of materials for everything you're building, including all your compiled code. And we do that at build time so that you get an accurate representation of what's in your software. It's kind of like when you make a pizza, right? You can call your local pizza shop and order a pizza. You don't know what ingredients go in it. You may have a general idea, but it's not correct or not complete. With our build time solution, we see everything that goes in that pizza as you're building the pizza, and we can provide that solution. And then our protection capability is part of the platform from an integration perspective. We can enable rapid integration, but it lives on the device. So we integrate that at software build time. So you don't have to change your source code. It's a one line change to your software build, and then you're done. So really slick and easy integration for customers.
I remember that when you go and talk to companies, they're like, yeah, we are using this, Docker container, but they don't even know what is running in their container. Also, it's not just, what is running, what kind of hard links they have. It could be anybody can change it and suddenly you are pulling content or code from, untrusted source. A lot of folks, I mean, the good example I think is the automobile industry, right? All the components come from different sources you don't know, but if you don't have the bill of materials, you don't even know where the problem is. How much awareness have you seen is there when it comes to software bill of materials bombs? Or you are still trying to educate people, or you're like, no, the education phase is over now. Also, the difference between, I think, you folks is that you work with some of these very very mature industries, so they don't need that education, they have already crossed that. Or you're looking at, no, they just are looking at optimizing solutions for their own needs.
Yeah, I think it really depends. So the medical device space is really a great example of a mature industry where the FDA, sorry, the FDA is requiring software bill of materials before they're going to approve any devices. So there's a real regulatory requirement. Those medical device manufacturers are very aware of SBOMs, and we don't have to educate them. We just talk to them about how our solution is better than what they're using today, and kind of work through that with them. But some of the other industries, like you mentioned, the Biden administration had an executive order. The European Union just passed the Cyber Resiliency Act, and a key focus of that is generation and sharing of software bill of materials. That's definitely impacting all the industries we talk to in critical infrastructure, but companies are at different stages. Some people are still trying to figure out what is an SBOM. Others generate them but don't want to share them. So the S4 conference last year in Miami was a really great illustration of how mature different industries and different companies are, where asset owners were able to come in and say, we want SBOMs for all the stuff that we have in our manufacturing plant, in our power substation, and a wide array of responses from industry, from we don't have those to what are SBOMs to you can't have them. And in some cases they were delivered, but it's definitely an interesting inflection point in industry where the executive orders are really helping push that, and the EU regulations as well. And so, we're in a really awesome place, I think, to start seeing not only generation of SBOMs, but actually using them to help secure your devices.
When we talk about, we talked about the executive order regarding SBOMs security. We kind of live in a world which is predominantly run by open source technologies. When it comes to, run safe security, how much open source do you folks do? When I say how much you do, it could be about releasing your own code, or it could be about involving, like SPDX is a very good example of open source for SBOMs. How much involvement do you have with open source?
Yeah, that's a great question. We use SBOMs or we use open source in all of our products, and we have solutions to make sure that we're compliant with all the open source licenses, that we're checking for vulnerabilities in those open source components as well. And they, like you said, they play a key role in devices functioning, right, and getting devices to market quickly. So we don't really shy away from open source. We embrace it. We actually committed patches and features to open source projects that we use as well, because we need them. Let's make them better. Let's help the community there. And so we do a lot of that, and some of our customers use our protections to protect the open source that they're using in their devices as well. So you know it's not just can we use it, how should we use it, but also how can we secure it and be aware of it, of the vulnerabilities that are present and also mitigate those vulnerabilities.
Do you also work with any of these open source projects or foundations like Linux Foundation or Apache or OpenStack or OpenInfra?
So not officially, not in any kind of formal capacity. That's something we'd like to move into. But one of the things that's a little strange when you look at these open source communities is they want everything 100% open source, and we're a business. So, like we'd love to provide our protections to, say, OpenSSL or to the Apache Foundation. And, whether or not they'd be open to having our protections baked in as a proprietary solution in their open source is kind of an open question. We get mixed feelings depending on who we talk to at various open source projects about that.
And since we are talking open source, and we mentioned some of these projects and foundations, and I'll be soon heading to KubeCon. Of course, AWS reInvent is also there, and cloud, edge, embedded devices. That's where a lot of things are moving. What kind of role you folks play in the whole ecosystem? And when I'm talking about ecosystem, it's like, yes, in the cloud world we talk about the whole hybrid model, right? You will have private cloud, public cloud, you will have all data center. When it comes to embedded devices, it's also, you have those remote devices, but you have those massive data centers also. Now folks are
Yep.
leveraging things like Kubernetes, to even manage these devices. Of course, Linux kernel is there, then Zephyr is there, and there are other micro, firmware controllers are there. What role do you play in the whole ecosystem? Or you focus only on that embedded device area of the company's overall IT footprint?
Yeah, we primarily are focused in the embedded device space, but we've recognized with device manufacturers and asset owners that there's more and more, as you talked about, infrastructure being stood up to talk to those embedded devices to provide, a holistic view of the manufacturing floor, the substation, and that's all running in the cloud. It's Docker containers, and so we have a solution where we've taken our protections and applied it to popular Docker images. So instead of pulling from Apache's official image, you can pull from a RunSafe image and get a RunSafe hardened version of that you would run. And it's version for version identical, and super easy to swap into a Kubernetes environment or a Docker deployment. And so we're seeing a lot of interest from asset owners and device manufacturers that are standing up kind of this managed services offerings to bridge that gap from the IT side to the OT, kind of the embedded device side as well.
When we look at embedded devices, can you also talk about how different they are from regular IT devices? What kind of vulnerabilities are there which are specific to embedded devices that you folks try to protect?
In a lot of ways, they're very similar, right? It's a Linux environment, or it's VxWorks or Zephyr. There's still code running that has vulnerabilities, but In a lot of ways, they're different as well. You don't have user authentication or local, keyboard and mouse access. So, a lot of the vulnerabilities that you might see in a corporate environment with your corporate laptop, aren't present in embedded devices, but you're still going to have, buffer overflows and other memory corruption vulnerabilities in there at really a higher percentage than usual. Microsoft and Google say anywhere from 40 to 70% of their vulnerabilities are memory corruption. I did some analysis on embedded devices, particularly in the industrial control system space, and we see about 72% of the vulnerabilities are memory corruption related in control systems. And that makes sense, right? A PLC doesn't need a web server. It's not going to have a SQL injection attack. It's not, hopefully going to have hard-coded credentials for a user that can't log into a system. So you would expect to see more vulnerabilities in the memory corruption space as a result. And, those are the majority of those are critical and high severity. So, they're really important to get resolved and mitigated as best you can.
These days, one of the hottest, at least hype topic is Gen AI. AI has been around for a very long time, but Gen AI has kind of rekindled our interest in AI, Gen AI. How much Gen AI or AI, I mean, AI is kind of next step to automation and everybody does automation, but I also want to understand the role of automation, AI, Gen AI in the embedded devices space.
There's definitely a lot of that happening in kind of the network intrusion detection, kind of outside the device boundary, and that makes sense there, right? You've got unknown network traffic, and you two different manufacturing facilities are going to look very different. So having AI there to help understand, is there a device that's malfunctioning due to a cyber attack, or maybe it's just physically malfunctioning. I think that makes a lot of sense. In the device protections itself, I think it's a little harder there. Gen AI is not super well suited for finding vulnerabilities in embedded software, and so I don't see as much of that in the on-device security space, but there are companies that are doing some behavioral analysis, kind of using more traditional AI approaches, less on the generative AI side of things. And I think that's particularly interesting. But one of the things that I see that's particular to ICS is AI and generative AI are really great at pointing a human in the direction of figuring out the last mile of what's actually happening in the security space. And if you've got an embedded device that's remote in a field 6 hours away from a human with no connectivity, you're going to be kind of limited in how much AI and Gen AI can help you there. But as we get more and more connected, there's going to be some more value there realized in these embedded devices that are at the edge.
And earlier you also mentioned, Series B round. Talk a bit about the funding and also what are the areas where you folks are investing? What are the areas where you're planning to further grow?
Our Series B was led by Critical Ventures, Sinewave Capital, and BMW iVentures. It was a $12 million round, and we're really growing outside of our traditional product market. So we have our core cyber protections. We're growing our platform that gives you awareness into the risk that's present in your supply chain. So that's our Identify product and the software bill of materials and understanding all the vulnerabilities that come in through your supply chain. And we're also expanding support to other RTOSs. So we support VxWorks. We're building out QNX, which is huge in the automotive space. And we're also working on safety standards compliance as well. So ISO 26262 for automotive and DO 178 for safety of flight for aerospace.
This is October. We are almost at the end of the year. Every year or next year, we run a prediction video series. So I would love to have you folks there as well. But just tease us what else to expect. Early next year. I don't want too much details because we'll keep it for the full term announcement. But just tease us a bit little about what kind of things we can expect from the company.
We're really expanding in our SBOM generation and supply chain risk assessment capabilities, and that's going to be really exciting. And a lot of customers are really valuing the full picture we're able to give them with very minimal false positives, with very accurate data on that side. And so that's really exciting. And then as we push into other RTOSs, that's going to open up a whole world of other markets that we can help solve these security problems with. So really excited about, branching out to QNX and LinkSauce and, getting through, safety certifications.
Shane, thank you so much for joining me today, and of course, talk about the company, talk about the whole ecosystem. Thanks for great insights, and I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me and be happy to come back anytime.